Thank you. First of all, apologies for being late. I've driven from Hammersmith from a training day today of some primary development workers, which was really exciting. So apologies there for being late. It's a lot warmer in London, I have to say. The wind just knocked me out as we came down the corner from the car park. I'm really pleased to be here, actually. I'm really pleased to be anywhere that wants to listen to sort of the perspective on restorative justice in schools. And it was a really lovely introduction. But what I want to really think about is probably restorative justice is something that you hear in a criminal justice setting. And not many people are aware of so much work that goes on in schools. So I just really want to bring you up to speed, set the scene, what are we doing in schools, and then think about what it actually achieves. So restorative justice in schools came into the UK at the end of the 1990s, mainly through the Thames Valley police officers who had been to Australia, to Wagga Wagga, brought back restorative justice and began training and using restorative conferencing in schools in the late 1990s. The Youth Justice Board then put a lot of money behind a project called Restorative Justice in Schools. And we were commissioned really with the task of actually doing restorative justice to the 60 young people in our borough who were mainly at risk of offending. The link between crime and exclusion is high, based on the fact that you are more likely to end up in the criminal justice system if you are excluded from school than otherwise. So the idea was originally to reduce exclusion, increase attendance, look at what it can achieve, and look at community cohesion and what the schools could actually achieve, but primarily about the reduction of exclusion. As we said, it reduced exclusion by up to 65% in our school, and then the programme rolled out nationally. Schools up and down the country over the last 11 or 12 years now have reduced their exclusion, their fixed-term exclusion, by over half. And what happened during that time was that we then looked at restorative approaches and we looked at using it as an early intervention. And what happened was the young people took their lead and they found that not only using it for an incident that had happened there and then, a more serious thing to avoid exclusion, it was about them asking for one of those thingies. They would come and ask for, can I do one of those thingies? And they would want to do it and get together with people who were living in their community in order to resolve conflict that was happening. So the young people in the school really took it on board. They took on this natural concept of speaking to one another, trying to resolve harm that happened before a huge big incident, and they took it and led it. So what's happened in schools is that it's not only used as something that we use for fixed-term exclusions and high-rated incidents. We use it for, in schools we use it as a general introduction to the way we speak, so a sort of common language around the school. So we have a scripted 5 questions of what's happened, who's been affected by what's happened, what we're thinking and feeling at the time, and what can be done to make things better. So it's a very simple script that whole schools are using in order to head off the larger incidents that happen in school. So young people are saying to each other, they're also being trained, they're talking about, well, let's sit down, let's see what's happened. So rather than waiting for a huge big incident to happen, they talk to one another. So the idea of this culture change came into the schools. And we were looking at, as I say, not only reducing exclusion, but how we were going to change the language, how people were going to relate to one another, looking at relationships and the harm done. So you can exclude a young person from school, they can go off, they can do their time at home or wherever they're going to do it, but actually they've got to come back. They've got to come back to school and they've got to work with the young people still in their community. School corridors are very small and narrow places if you haven't resolved the harm. Schools are using restorative justice alongside their ordinary discipline policies, but also writing restorative approaches into their policy. So using this type of common language, what's happened, who's been affected by what's happened, what can you do to make things better? It's a very common approach to resolving harm. So the schools have excelled, tried and tested evaluations up and down the country, first starting with the Youth Justice Board, Restorative Justice in Schools programme, but then on to places like Bristol, Sept and Manchester, Merseyside and Cheshire, up and down the country, all using restorative approaches. This common goal, looking at the behaviour and how we resolve conflict in school. It's become a way of looking at being preventative, reacting to something that's happened, and also that important word of reintegration afterwards. So exclude a young person from school, but allow them to come back, allow them to put something right. The same as if you have a restorative justice conference in a criminal justice setting, it's about accepting responsibility, wanting to make things better, and then reintegrating back into society. So schools these days, they're looking at the wider picture. Their young people are training, primary school children are training, they're going out on the playground and being on duty and visibly talking to their peers and looking at early intervention that can put things right. So we've come a long way with restorative justice. I think we've got a long way to go. Not all schools use it, it's still very much in pockets up and down the country. But really thinking about, let's look seriously at the benefits it can bring and see if we can get some force behind it in order to get all schools trained to a national standard and look at what can be done to reinforce it in our schools, get schools to take it on. It's very much a school-based acceptance of it. If the school is behind it, it really works very well, so looking at the whole school. But thinking about how can we support that movement to use restorative justice in schools. So I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm hoping that we've got lots of interesting questions. Thank you.